Hello, I am knitting in the woods. I just hiked up a small trail to reach where I know there is a picnic table. It's covered in alder catkins, little caterpillar things that drop from the trees, the alder trees, with just full of, they're full of pollen, and probably I'm allergic to them, but I'm allergic to so much, I'm not going to pay attention. Anyway, I just I just felt like expressing something. And it's been 3 months since I last recorded. I thought I would just sit and knit. And I jotted down a few ideas to mention, as I have been thinking a lot in the past about writing a memoir, whether I publish it or not. So I just jotted down some decade by decade ideas. And I should preface this by saying that when I realized that this year, on the Lunar New Year, which was a few weeks ago, is the year of the fire horse, that is my year. I was born almost 60 years ago, in the year of the fire horse. And so that got me thinking, when you've spent nearly 6 decades on this planet. I had never really broken my life down decade by decade before, and regardless of whether I write a memoir or not, I just thought I just jotted down my decade key experiences and just thought I would read them. I don't know. This is just kind of a strange idea, but I just have been mulling over how I want so badly, as I enter my 60s, which will be in not till the very end of 2026. So I still am hanging on to the 50s a little bit here. It just made it clear to me why I so badly want to call in light and reconnect to anything from my past that I enjoyed, that brought me joy, and a sense of connection with the world, whether that's human or more than human. And so I know that for me, rewilding, I like that term, like reconnecting to the true nature around us is always what brings me back to a core identity, a core sense of humanity. There's a plane going overhead, so I don't know if that's gonna block out my voice, but and so I know that's one key piece of how I'm going to reconnect. And yeah, I've just really struggled over the past 6 months with mental health issues and sought help in many different ways. And I'm doing okay, but I also am trying to give space to grief, which is always, that's a lifetime work, as anyone knows. Just being human, we grieve our losses. So I just will read my little key things. And what this really made me realize, looking back over my life, is that before I reached 20, the age of 20, so my first 2 decades, I really peaked out. I mean, honestly, I feel like as far as any outward signs of success, in quotes, I really worked hard at several things and did them well and learned so much from wise teachers. And I really feel like, in a way, I reached a sort of personal empowerment peak by age 20. So as you can imagine, I've been around 40 more years after that. So it's always been a little bit of a struggle to me to reconnect to a sense of solid self-esteem, I suppose. Knowing that my energy, my life energy, can be of service in any way. That I am connected to some sort of spark of life. It was just so clear before I was 20. And so anyway, I just thought I would list a few things that happened in my pre-20 years. Okay, and then that I'm grateful for. So one was that in my high school, public high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I attended 2 years of a pilot program, which at the year that I was, the high school years I was there, this was a pilot program called the Career Enrichment Center. And it is now still ongoing, and apparently it trains pre-nursing students and pre-med students, but who can get college credit for that, kind of like a in Washington State, we have a, I forget the name of it, but where you get community college credits as a high school student. And then by the time you graduate high school, you have an AA degree, associate's degree. Anyway, so this is sort of similar, except that I didn't get any of the credits, but I gained a lot of really amazing teaching from 2 women science teachers, which in the 80s was an extremely rare thing, especially in a public school system. So I really value those 2 years of biology courses that I had, including amazing botany class that taught me to see the desert as an alive, living force that I had never seen it as before. When I would walk a mesa, which is like kind of a dry, flat desert patch to get to high school every day. And most people driving by that would just see it as like, that's dead land, or there's nothing there. But taking a desert botany class just taught me so much appreciation. That was like one key life shift, awareness shift, I guess. Okay, so that was one major thing. Then I had started piano lessons by the age of 7 because I begged my parents even before they had a piano or were able to obtain a piano. They actually had a loan from a relative to purchase a little upright piano, which is what I practiced on for the next 7 years, from 7 to age 14, and which point I won a statewide piano competition, and it was really where I channeled all my emotion, all my expression into, and then by age 17, I had been accepted. I auditioned to several music schools and was accepted to one conservatory with a minor scholarship for piano performance, which is what I did for 1 year of college. At the same time, I was confined to a back brace and for scoliosis from age 12 to 16. Which is its own like medical health journey, and very confining as a young person as your body is changing. By 18 and 19, I was 18 and 19 when I first was exposed. I quit the music conservatory and just went into the wild. Basically, I went to a school that changed schools and immersed myself in this fledgling program that was called College Outdoors. And I'm so grateful to this day for that experience, because I really think, looking back, that it was peak life experience for me, and pretty much the best group experience with other humans that I've had, where I felt 100% accepted. This is outside of my family, my family members. And I just have so many fond memories of camping and river rafting in the San Juan River in Utah, and then sea kayaking in the San Juan Islands in Washington near the Canadian border. Great distances, and those were 2 separate groups, and I went on many smaller trips, but those were 2 10-day trips. And I learned one thing, is that after you've been out without connection to electricity, running water, all the things of modern life, that first shower after 10 days, that is a true spiritual experience. Okay, so I did all that by age 20. I really went through all those changes. So by age 20 to 30, by the decade of 20 to 30, I worked tons of admin jobs, temp jobs, tech editing of library card catalogs, which are a thing of the past, before anything was, any books were like uploaded online, and now that the entire digital data lives online, it's a job definitely of the old times. I volunteered as an ESL tutor of people from around the world, refugees and immigrants who are trying to learn English as a second language, which was such a misnomer because often many of the people that I met from different countries spoke up to upwards of 7 languages, whereas I spoke only 1 and could understand a teeny bit of Spanish because I just grew up in New Mexico. But that was just, I devoted myself to that volunteer effort for a total of 5 years in my 20s, and met so many interesting people from different countries. And then I also, through a long story, I ended up spending a few months in Japan by way of Hawaii, staying at a Buddhist temple for a full month daily, Japanese Buddhists. Also at that time, around those years after college, I had several African housemates who taught me how to cook their foods. So essentially, I did many things that were sort of world travel without most of the travel, other than Japan, where I physically was. But through interacting with people, learning from people from different countries, it really, really opened my eyes to valuing, first of all, how much fear there is of the other. And until you sit down one-on-one with someone, you really don't understand how much, I don't want to say similarity because we're all growing up in different cultural contexts, but just how much heart connection there can be with someone, even if you don't speak the same language. Okay, now the decade of 30 to 40 involved marriage, giving birth to my only child, followed by divorce, and followed by the most healthy experience I've had with a relationship, interrupted after 6 months by his catastrophic health crisis, as well as my child's life-threatening illness in that same year. All the rest of my 30s, after 2.5 years of my child's treatment, I was very involved while working 50 to 60 hour weeks as a single parent, very involved with cancer activism and giving public speeches, doing volunteer work for organizations, nonprofits supporting cancer education and funding for research. Then my 40s to 50s I just have memories of rewarding volunteer experiences, living in poverty while inside a generously gifted, amazing 100-year-old house that I was able to raise my child primarily in, despite, so I lived in this neighborhood and in a house I would never have been able to rent otherwise, through some very generous people. And the rest of my 40s to 50s was really wrapped around my child's activities while trying to work upwards to 60, even more hours a week. And my core peak memories from that time that gave me so much joy was just watching my child grow into an adult and just being a part of that process, especially as her resilience was so great to have even reached that point. It was very added extra poignance to it, to watching her grow. Okay, now the 50 to 60, which I'm still not quite 60, was marked by, started off with the COVID pandemic, my own cancer diagnosis and treatment, my dad's cancer and saying goodbye to him for 2 years, followed by his passing 3 months ago on my birthday. Severe depression, burnout cycle, followed by a second try at a graduate degree in order to try to shift the trajectory of my life and feel like I had some control. You know, that whole idea of you're the captain of your ship. It's never worked out for me, I'm afraid. Followed by 250 job applications to try to obtain a job that would be better for my mental health. As I am, part of my burnout issue is absorbing so much of the human experience where I have no control to interact with it. I'm basically like, you know how they say AI is like the root of it, the base foundational part of it was large language models. Now it's morphing into all these different forms of AI. But I basically am a large language model. And I have spent 31 years transcribing human voice and human experience. And while it's absolutely fascinating, it puts me where I am isolated at my computer screen all day, burning out my eyes, my ears, and absorbing so many energies from around the world from all these varied voices, but never having a chance to interact with them or do any of the things that brought me so much fulfillment in volunteer work, where I was part of teams, involved in some activity, some goal. Oh, I did leave out by the time in my 40s, I did complete 2 half marathons and 1 full marathon, all to raise funds for cancer research. So now that I'm poised on this year of the fire horse, I am thrilled and relieved that I will receive a bit of help from generations past, my father's father and my father, who started a small fund that would be distributed among my siblings upon my father's passing. And for me, this is pretty much life-changing rather than just a nice to have. Reaching 60 with next to no retirement, I had tried to save, 35 or 30 a month for all the years that I was raising my daughter, toward a retirement fund. But other than that, I really don't have more than, I couldn't live a month's worth of expenses. And I just assumed I would never be able to retire or never stop working. And when you know that your work is part of what impacts your mental health, but no one is giving you a chance to have another job, other employment, then that is just a recipe for feeling very helpless. And so my 60 to 70 decade, which will be by the end of this year starting, I despite all the darkness that I am really heartbroken over, and many people are over what's happening in the world right now, I deeply am putting out into the universe that I want to bring intentionally more light into myself, figure out ways to keep that connection going so that I don't just give up, so feel that my life energy is so at its end or pointless, essentially. And so I know there's got to be another way for me to go into the next decade, or to experience things in the next decade of my life, which could be my last. I mean, statistically, once you reach 75, I think is the statistic that many people have serious health issues. I've kind of already been through some of that, so I'm healthy now, and physically, maybe not so much mentally, and I just feel like if I can reconnect to that pre-20 self, of that spark, that I have the capacity, both physically and mentally, to enjoy some things in the next decade. So from the gift from my grandfather of these funds that are equivalent to 8 years of my personal income, that just allows me takes off so much weight off these shoulders of just being able to get by and just not have to worry that I won't make it through the next week, which is how I pretty much lived my adult life. You may ask, why do I spend so much on yarn? But I've had this discussion elsewhere, if I'm truly living near poverty. But yeah, yarn and knitting is following the thread that pretty much knits me together. So it's either that, it's often taken the place of therapy for me. And so if you think the cost of yarn and compare it to the cost of therapy, maybe it's a wash, maybe it's even better. So that's how I justify that. I do want to mention that I have recently gone through my entire yarn stash, and saw a call was put out in my local community for a group that knits hats and blankets for homeless and foster children and families. And so I did donate, I think it was a total of 6 grocery bags worth of yarn that was at one point purchased I purchased everything on sale, but it was purchased for a specific thing I intended to make that clearly, after it's been sitting in my closet for several years, is not going to become that thing that I intended. So I'm just so grateful that I was able to do that and, put that out. And then speaking of like using your life energy, I've set a goal. I'm pretty sure by now everyone in the knitting community knows about the red hats, and the melt the ice hat that was the pattern on Ravelry that raised close to $1 million for Minneapolis and Minnesotan nonprofits and groups of people that were supporting their neighbors during a time that was so challenging for that community. And so what I decided to do, aside from purchasing the $5 pattern, which is truly amazing if you think about a $5 pattern raising nearly $1 million. But aside from purchasing that to go toward the Minnesotan effort, I made it a point to knit nearly every night, as long as my hands can tolerate it without pain, which has been touch and go this past month. But I've been knitting a goal of making 16 red hats, and I put out a call to people I know asking for donations to local groups near me who are supporting families affected by detainment or deportation. And as it's something that I feel strongly about as a grandchild of immigrants who fled war and fascism, and considering that the grandmother that fled war is the one who taught me to knit. It's full circle moment for me. And so I am making, this is like the 19th, no, not, this is the 9th of 16 red hats that I am making to give to people, and then kind donations submitted to the my local community's efforts. So all that to say, that is the type of thing that fulfills me, even though it's not my job. And I would so love to be involved in some project that pays forward some of my life experience, and have that be my job, my paid work. I still have a good, I was never intending to retire until, I had, or if ever, maybe 75 was in my mind, because I couldn't imagine my hands typing past age 75. I genuinely don't know if my ears and hands can last that long, and eyes. But if I were doing some other work, some other job, at least part-time, that would really be a game changer for me, feeling some sense of forward motion and contribution to community and to this world that I am existing in. So I wish everyone out there well, and lots of deep breaths, and my thoughts are with all the amazing ways that people support one another in these times of a lot of confusion and a lot of stuff, layers being pulled back, of how the world really works and how systems of power and leadership work. I think it's been very enlightening for some, and also deeply disturbing, I guess you could say, how the network of those in power who do not own the real power in life, how the whole network props up what we think of as society and societal rules. Anyway, that's some of my thoughts, and I just felt like I needed to have some form of expression, so whether this gets out. On the topic of inheritance and poverty, I just wanted to mention I'm aware how few people actually are in a position to receive an inheritance, and I am profoundly grateful for my ancestors' decisions and foresight for their then unborn. No, we were actually born. Take that back. The grandchildren were born, but the foresight to set something of their life's work aside for future decades. It's very humbling to receive. And I also want to quote what I was told is my great grandmother's saying in Europe, the European side, that she used to say, apparently, that money does not provide happiness. It does not bring happiness, but it sure is good for the nerves. And I wholeheartedly agree. In fact, I wonder how many health issues in this country are due to financial stress and the stress piled upon people of the shame that when you are surviving with very little, the added shame of being told that, oh, well, you're just making poor decisions, poor spending decisions, poor saving decisions, when in reality, many people are just doing the absolute best they can and making as wise decisions as they can within a very restricted framework. So, off my soapbox. And on that note, I will wish you all well. Here's a little bit of witch's butter. It's basically an edible fungus. I have never eaten it, but you can just pull it off and eat it, apparently. Look at all this glorious beard moss. It's kind of like algae and lichen combined, I think, not really a moss. My Merlin bird app says that bird noise is a crowned kinglet. Anyway, I'm sort of lost in the woods at this moment, and I don't mind, because honestly I feel more at home here than anywhere. But I've been lost in these woods before. Once was on a first date with someone where it was literally the first time I had met this person, and we got so lost that by the time it got dark and we were going around in circles in this network of trails, after it was dark for about an hour or so, we finally went to a farmer's house that we found somewhere along the edge of the woods and knocked on the door. And the gentleman was so kind to drive us back to the town where we started and said that he thought we had made loops of about 12 miles. So that sure tells you about something about someone on a first date. We survived, but our relationship did not last. Anyway, that was kind of a fun memory to show how I really don't mind getting lost in the woods. I've been out walking for about, I think, 2 hours now. I am not quite sure. So, we shall see. This is my jam where I'm not working or knitting. More fabulous beard moss and a really cool tree trunk that has a hole in it. Let me see if I can. It's like a oh, it's not actually a trunk. It's like bent over. I thought it was like a cross section of a trunk, but it's actually, the trunk is all bent over, probably from a storm, and it's partly roots. But it's really cool that it looks like a donut hole. Okay, I just walked, clambered, and slid, and thankfully did not twist an ankle over this clear-cut area that is clearly private property that I ended up coming out into because on the top above that ridge, because the trail I was on had a ginormous tree that that had fallen across the trail. So now I have found my way back into a sort of civilized trail. But I know not where it goes. We will continue on. So this is where I came out. Incredible view. Not sure if it's coming out clear on my camera, but just such a peaceful view by the road. Now I'm walking into a town that I did not mean to be near, so I can hitch a ride back to my car. What an adventure.